welcome everybody. We're going to give people just a minute or two to come on in and get going, but welcome to today's Cyber Feud, industry analyst versus security practitioner. So we will just stand by for another minute or two while we wait for everyone to join. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're going to give everyone just another minute here before we get going. But welcome to Cyber Feud, industry analyst versus security practitioner. And thanks again for joining today. All right, and if you're just joining, we're going to give people just about 15 more seconds before we launch into Cyber Feud. So welcome and thanks for joining us. All right, well, with that, I think we'll get started here. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We're excited to kick off Cyber Feud today here. Industry analyst versus security practitioner. And this is all really about, we're going to try to have some fun with it, but it's really about, giving some practical advice and about how to run a modern vulnerability risk management program. And we've got two great guests and panelists, and I'd like to introduce them now. So we can go to the next slide. And so we have today Kevan Bard and Erik Nost. And so Kevan is Director of Product Security at Morningstar. And Kevan, why don't you do us the honors of introducing yourself, and we'd love to hear from you.
Sure. I would say I started my cybersecurity career on the vendor side, kind of similar to where you're sitting, Dimitri, although technical role. It was 10 years ago, and I've been managing more and more vulnerabilities over time. Certainly more sources of discovered vulnerabilities, more teams responsible. And that complexity has really made me appreciate how difficult this problem can be.
Great. And then we also have Erik Nost. Erik is a senior analyst at Forrester in the security and risk space, and he actually covers vulnerability risk management. And welcome, Erik, and would love to hear, a little about your background.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Dimitri. Happy to be here. I'm a Forrester analyst covering vulnerability risk management and attack surface management. Prior to Forrester, I led security and risk teams in the financial services vertical, and I'm really excited to be here. It's going to be a fun webinar.
Great. Great. So before we dive into the game, and we'll explain to everyone how this is going to work, we wanted to, on that topic of a modern vulnerability risk management program, I wanted to give you each just a little opportunity to talk about, what do you view as the key components? Why now? Like, what's changing in the market that it's timely that people need to look at a different approach? And, start with you, Kevan, of how you've kind of adopted this. And, you are a Brinker customer, but would love for you each just to give your opinions of what it looks like and why now.
Great. Thanks, Dimitri. First of all, there's been an explosion in the number of tools that are used to discover vulnerabilities. So it's become more and more important to make sure each of those tools is functioning so that you are applying the testing or the investigation uniformly across your environment. And then you have to put it all together in a usable way. So the people who are accountable for fixing, they need to be able to see it all in one place. You can't send them to 10, 12, 15 different tools. So again, assembling it, making sense of it, adding some context, and then tracking, right? Because you're going to try all these different strategies to get people to do the right thing and to address these vulnerabilities. How do you know your strategies are working? It's a big problem.
Great. And so we'll dive into all that, which is great. And then Erik, I guess your synopsis of, what really is a modern vulnerability management program and what's really changed to drive the need to take a different approach?
Yeah, I like what you said, Kevin, about how there's just this explosion of tools that are out there to discover and assess, different types of risks in your environment now. You need that unified approach, but those explosion of different kinds of tools, they exist because there's so many different kinds of assets, and the way that we are doing business now in 2023 now, it's changed a lot since before the pandemic, before COVID-19, and even COVID-19, that it kind of accelerated the way that we changed how we do business. It exploded our SaaS, our reliance on SaaS applications, on cloud deployments, and meanwhile, there's all these other types of technologies that organizations are relying on more and more within their environments, that they need to inventory, and they need to understand the type of risk that they present. On top of all that, we also have historically high CVE volume. Year after year, we see more and more vulnerabilities added to the NVD database. I think there was like 22,000 last year, which prior to that was like around 20,000 or so. So, I mean, the types of assets and the volume of assets and what we rely on to conduct business are growing, but so are the number of vulnerabilities that we need to understand and assess.
Got it. Okay. Well, I think those are good pieces to go into, let's introduce the game, if you will. So we wanted to model this a little after Family Feud. So we've got 4 topics we're going to go into, which kind of mirror some of the things you guys were talking about, from, let's talk asset inventory, prioritizing through the chaos, remediation, who's going to fix it, and gamification, getting the business to act. And so we're going to go through each of these. We're going to start each with a poll. And then the game we're going to have is you guys are each going to guess, we'll alternate who starts, which is the most popular response to the poll. And whoever wins, gets a point for each round. And then we will tally up at the end. And by the way, for participants in the webinar, if you have questions, please use the Q&A section, put in your question, and we'll get to them as we go through. But with that, Kevin, Erik, you guys ready? You feel confident?
I'm ready.
Okay.
I've always wanted to play Family Feud. Yeah, this is awesome.
Great. Well, so let's go to the first one. We're going to pull up, let's talk asset inventory. We're going to pull up the first poll here. And this is, what percentage of assets across your attack surface do you fully understand? So I think Erik and this both comes to, whether it's the assets or the vulnerabilities coming from those assets, just understanding them is a key piece. So is it 10%, 25%, 50%, 75%, or 100%? So I wish I had some music actually, but I'd love for you guys, we'll give people about a minute, and we've got a little meme we're going to show during each poll. So we poke fun at the subject a little, but if we could show that meme while we're waiting here for the poll, that'd be great. But we'll give people just about a minute to answer the poll. Lauren, if you get that meme slide. Yep, great. So this, I love this one. It's an oldie but goodie in terms of asset inventory. Certainly is a pain that people have had, and a solid topic we're going to talk about here. So, okay. So we closed the poll, and let's. You guys ready? So, Erik, you're going first on this one. What's your bet? What are you voting? Which one's going to be most popular?
I'm gonna have this one at about 50%, and I'll tell you why. 50%. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think organizations.
Well, hold on one second. We got to give Kevin his chance to vote, and then we'll go in.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm a realist. It's 25%, Dimitri.
Okay. All right. Let's see what the answer is. Oh, Erik for the win.
Darn.
All right, Erik. So you were going first, and you got 1 point. That's one, Erik. So, but go ahead. Let's continue, Eric, as you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, I think when a lot of folks think asset inventory, they go back to their CMDB, and maybe they go back and start thinking about, a spreadsheet that they update every year or so. And to them, maybe that was acceptable, 10 years ago for, how asset inventories are managed. But the reality is, assets are they're much more dynamic and ephemeral these days, and you need a way to check in on your asset inventory much more regularly than a spreadsheet or even a CMDB. But beyond that, I think that there's generally this overconfidence that that organizations have all the context behind these assets as well, and that they even know the purpose or the value of all the assets. Because when you start to dig down into where and how and when what asset led to a breach, guess what? A lot of times it's an asset that organizations really didn't have eyes on, or they might not understand that, yeah, the controls and the context behind this asset were not as strong as maybe you thought you had. So that's why I think it's about, I thought maybe half, because there'd be, more organizations answering the survey thinking that they had a good inventory, and then there was the more realist side thinking, oh no, we don't. So that's why I went with that.
Got it.
Let me just break in. It's also about relationships. Okay. You really, you're scanning maybe static analysis, right, on code repos. How do code repos relate to applications? How do those relate to business services? How do those relate to business lines? Having that hierarchy set out and making sure that you have an ability to assign a vulnerability from whatever part of that hierarchy to the correct team that's responsible for it, and then show it to their leadership, who's accountable for usually a much broader swathe. That's difficult. That's why I think it's only 25%. In a modern enterprise, I think it's very difficult to get all of that correct all of the time.
And so it sounds like you guys are saying, there's the listing of assets, right? Which there's so many sources now to really pull that all together. CMDB used to be one way, and then the relationship, and then the context of how it fits in, right? All of that, it seems like you guys are saying, is part of an asset inventory, right? And I guess so Eric and Kevan, from either for your research, Eric, or from hands-on experience in whether at Morningstar or others, Kevan, how do you find, what are the best strategies you've seen people to actually use to get over this hump, if you will, and start to get a realistic inventory?
I have opinions here too. Sorry, Eric. So, we've seen this great big shift, this cloud transformation, this empowerment of individual product teams, these 2 pizza or smaller teams, right? They can do everything. They can do networking. They can do all the infrastructure, all the database work, a lot of it just via an API or a CLI. So they're hyper empowered, which means they really need to own all of the vulnerabilities that affect their systems, just the whole stack, right? And that's different. In the past, you'd have lots of specialists. They would handle, the infrastructure piece, or even just like the storage piece of the infrastructure and so on. Now we've got teams that are empowered and responsible to do it all. You got to shrink that complexity down to something that they can understand. They're not specialists. They're more or less generalists.
Got it. Eric, any parting words on this one before we head over to the next topic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing the similar thing, Kevan, that there's a kind of a shift of the decentralization of technology, and identifying, who owns or how or why or when or what the risks are beyond what IT teams were historically responsible for managing. It's going to take a little bit of a long shift to really get there, so that the folks that are now, they're responsible for spinning up cloud apps. They're deploying technology without the assistance of IT now, and for them to fully understand that risk, it's going to take a little bit of a shift. Yes, and that's where security teams can be proponents and advocates for what the business units are going through and really help to educate, what the risk is beyond just, issuing a ticket and, wagging fingers.
Got it. Great. Okay. We could talk forever on that. So, in terms of time, we'll head over to the next topic, but I think that was great. So prioritizing through the chaos. So you both have mentioned the number of tools, this kind of amazing complexity in terms of number of assets and the vulnerabilities coming. So we wanted to talk now about how do you start to sort through all of that once you have assets and vulnerabilities. And so, we'll go to the poll now. And this poll is all about, how are you prioritizing vulnerabilities and findings today? And so there's, really three answers here. One is manually using spreadsheets and scores from vulnerability scanners directly. Second is homegrown solution. So, homegrown something that combines business context with scanner scores and, so you can compute risk scores for prioritization. And then third is, a purchase of a vendor purchase solution, that consolidates all these different scanning results from across these different parts of the attack surface, integrates business context and prioritize them based on risk score for you. Those are the three choices. And Kevan, we're going to start with you on this one. So, where do you think? What do you think? We'll give people a little time here to answer, but where are you betting on the top choice?
I'm going to hold off until the votes start to pile in, but being a realist / pessimist, I think you can guess where I'm going to land.
Okay.
I think we're still in the land of spreadsheets. Got it.
It is certainly interesting how a lot of people are there. All right. I think we can, should we close out the poll? I think that's good enough. We'll close it out. Oh, wait, Erik, you have to guess. Sorry, don't show the results yet, Erik.
Yeah, I think I'll give two answers for this. I think that people are going to answer that it's for prioritizing. It's probably somewhere in that middle between spreadsheets and a vendor provided solution. But to get through a lot of their reporting, that they report up to KRIs and risk committees and so forth, that they're using more of a spreadsheet approach.
So for this one, what are you answering?
I'll answer for this one for prioritizing the remediations. I think it's probably in the middle there, that homegrown solution.
Homegrown. All right, here we go. All right, sounds good. Let's see the results.
Oh, I'm so wrong.
Interesting. Okay, so vendor purchase solution, 7 out of 11. Okay. So it's interesting to see, definitely more people on the homegrown or vendor purchase solution. And so, Kevan, we'll start with you here. So, I mean, I know you were saying you're more the pessimist, and
hey, we've got the vanguard here in the participants. I love it. I think it's really important. We've been hearing about how context makes all the difference. You lose credibility if you're just pointing to a scanner report and using default severity or priority as the gospel. I definitely don't recommend that. You have to at least take a slice that says, is this external facing? Does this have sensitive data? There's just the bare minimum. Maybe you even want to include a view or a weighting on your algorithm that says, has this been exploited? Right? Get some feedback into your scoring system. Otherwise, it's pretty meaningless. It's just data. It's not really information or intelligence like it needs to be. You have limited time. I mean, I've been in an environment, thankfully not Morningstar, where there are over 1 million findings in the vulnerability category. Okay, what are you supposed to do with that?
Yeah. And Erik, I know you wrote a recent research note all about how CVSS is not enough, and different components you need to really look at contextually. So I'd love to hear, your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, CVSS alone is not sufficient these days to prioritize vulnerabilities. It's a good input. It can lead you towards as it can be a factor into that decision. But really, when you're dealing with the enormous volume of assets you have in your environment and the historic CVE volume we talked about earlier, you need to understand what's most important in your organization. You have to understand where, what data is at risk, what impact to critical business process, revenue generating services, customer experience, your experience of your partners and your employees that are at stake here for if and when this vulnerability leads to be exploited. So asset importance, business criticality, that certainly should be an input into how organizations are prioritizing risk, along with things like threat likelihood, and CVSS can be a factor into threat likelihood, but also threat intelligence. Looking at stuff that's actually actively exploited out there, which helps to take that guesswork out. It's less it's less trying to predict the future and being predictive. It's more saying, oh, there is an exploit happening out here. It's impacting my industry and organizations like me. This is something I should fix, and that is a perfectly acceptable way to try and prioritize. To start with stuff that's exploited and stuff that's being actively exploited or has POC or known exploit code out there, applying that towards what's most important in your environment. And also, it depends on your organization. Every organization is unique. Every organization has different needs. So thinking about what is most important from your senior leadership is something that should go into your prioritization puzzle as well.
And Kevan, just curious, a lot of what we're talking about, some of it comes from systems, CMDBs, threat intelligence feeds, different detection and scanning tools. Some of it's living in people's heads, right? And kind of maybe on paper, maybe it's water cooler. I don't know if people use water coolers and talk anymore, but with COVID, but just the notion of maybe talk a little about how do you go about taking this, there's data feeds you can use, which is one set. The other is how do you get that kind of more tribal knowledge and operationalize it? Because I think both of you are talking about that. And what's been your experience with that?
It takes time, but I think you have to systematize things. So, for example, if you have a responsible disclosure policy and people are sending you reports and they're validated, you need to get them into a format that can be added to Brinca or whatever your vulnerability aggregator is. It doesn't help for you to have a pool of highly validated, high value findings and not integrate them with the rest of your vulnerability management program. That's just not a good plan. So to that end, also, there are certain types of, say, application security tests or infrastructure tests that are just less likely to give you noise, less likely to give you potentials. They're more on the side of the validated vulnerabilities. Those validated vulnerability type sources, they're just, I would suggest that we push them up a little bit. They're a little bit more higher priority because that they're high value findings to begin with. There's no question mark, right? And so it's just a lot easier for teams to consume and to act upon because they're real.
Got it. Great. All right. Any last thoughts on prioritizing through the chaos?
Look, I hate to be the realist again, but your internal and external auditors are going to want to see some attention on the systems that are in scope for different client or industry or regulatory audits. It's just a fact. You don't have to aim for perfection on that stuff, obviously, but you have to show progress on things that are going to have that extra transparency and scrutiny.
Got it. Okay. Let's head to the next section. We got a few questions coming in that I'll figure out when to work in. But ownership and remediation. So I know we've talked about the complexity of assets, and you've both also talked about the decentralization of IT, which brings a lot of ownership complexity into this. So we'll start off with the next poll, and hopefully, Kevan, you can win one here. But this one is all about how automated is the creation of remediation workflows for your developer, engineer, sysadmin, right? So this is not automated, partially automated, fully automated. So how automated is the notion of vulnerability management teams, your vulnerability management team participants, in terms of automating how you assign and put out remediation tickets? So we give people some time here. Erik, you're first again. So you can consider your answer. Let's see what you. Last one was interesting. You guys thought, the might be a little shaken with the last one. So let's see where you answer now. But
I think the number one answer is going to fall in the partially automated, because I think that most orgs are using a combination of having to go through and find findings like from pen tests and other types of report text-based findings that they then need to manually go in and open up like a JIRA ticket for and find the right owner for, versus there's other types of findings that they're using through their vuln scanners or other vulnerability risk management solutions that are bringing more of an automated solution. So I think it's partially because there's still just other kinds of findings out there that can't be fully automated just yet.
got it. All right, we've closed the poll, but Kevin, your vote before we show the results.
Fully, I would argue that if the tickets aren't being automatically created and their life cycle tracked, meaning the status, you close it when the scanner says it's done, is it really a ticket?
Got it. Okay, let's see the results. No. Erik is running away with it. Oh, man. Okay. So, interesting that not automated or partially. So, got it. All right. Well, Erik, over to you here in terms of, expanding more on this, digging in. So it is I think to the notion of you've got all this complexity, automations, and you've got this real complication of ownership. How do you look to really help smooth that and accelerate the way people are actually remediating risk, not just finding out about risk?
Yeah, I mean, when you go back to the vulnerability risk life cycle, there's it's finding the stuff, identifying it, assessing, prioritizing, but then fixing it is that probably the most difficult part of that entire life cycle when it comes down to it. I talked to a number of Fortune 500 clients, here at Forrester, with varying degrees of maturity in their vulnerability management program. Some of them are just looking to prioritize better, but all of them, even if they've figured out how to prioritize better and they have a mature, robust vulnerability risk management program, they're still trying to figure out, how do we track remediations across this life cycle? How do we know the status of stuff in real time, or near real time at least, right? Whether it's a vulnerability that's been patched, or a configuration change was made properly. How are we validating that the vulnerability has been remediated, but also tracking it all across the type of reporting that you have to, as a security leader, deliver up to stakeholders and say, here's the teams that are doing well, here's the teams that are not, here are the teams that across geographic regions or sites or different subsidiaries that we have problems with, and here's the ones that we don't. And this is important as well, because you want to make sure that you're looking at the teams that are doing well, and then applying the what they're doing well to the teams that are not doing, to improve the teams that are falling behind. So it's a learning exercise to improve your program, if and when you can track remediations across all these variables.
And Kevin, I know you've done a ton of work here in terms of really, your comment about fully automated is interesting. So clearly you've done a lot of work to fully automate this. Take us through what that looks like and what's worked for you.
Sure. So my colleagues and I who manage these processes and leverage automation, as I alluded to, we have a discipline here. You don't bring a new source in unless you can attribute every finding to a team of people and the application that is in question, right? So we basically will not bring in any source of vulnerability with that information lacking. So it obviously complicates the rollout of a new tool, right? You have to really think through and be mindful, how am I going to attach each and every finding to a team of people and the application in question or the system in question? But it will it will pay huge dividends down the road. There are no items that are unassigned or no owner, right? And it helps you slow down instead of saying, okay, I bought this tool, I'm going to turn it up and I'm going to just start baking data. Like, it has to be useful, actionable data. And one thing I want to say about that is you can put everything into Brinka, and we do, but we don't cut tickets for everything. We define an acceptable level of risk, right? Based on those contextual factors, based on the severity, of course, from the scanners and the tools. Assemble all of that, and there's a subset that gets created as tickets. You can't create tickets for everything. That's potentially spamming people.
Got it. Interesting. And I mean, one thing I've been struck by, it seems, and we talked about this a little in our prep, right? This notion of it's easy to add new scanning tools to detect stuff. It's kind of, okay, exciting, if you will, and easy to talk about. You got to detect new stuff and cover new areas, but doing something about it was interesting. So to hear you say that, you really don't bring in a new tool unless you can actually close that loop. And it's kind of what you were saying too, Erik, in terms of if you're not actually closing the risk, then what's the point? So kind of interesting.
Just to expand on that one more time. We also use grouping, right? Like, group by the remediation. If the fix for a known bad library, for example, known vulnerable library that has an available fix, you might fix 10 or 15 or 500 individual issues. You should group them by the vulnerable library. You should not give someone 500 tickets when the remediation is one change. Give them one ticket. Use grouping appropriately. It's just a lot more usable. You have to think like your users or your internal customers when you roll this stuff out.
And that can go back to the prioritization puzzle that we had earlier. It's not always about, well, it is about, mitigating and reducing risk, but it's also about, hey, where can we mitigate the most risk for the least amount of work? And oftentimes it is exactly what you just said, Kevan. Let's find that low-hanging fruit and bust it out.
Got it. Yeah, we'll get into, I think that's a great segue into kind of our next segment, which is, gamification and getting the business to act. And I think this is one I find really interesting in terms of just how do you, it's one that I think we struggle with a lot as a kind of community and as a security teams in general. Of, you've got this stuff, you throw it over the wall. How do you actually make sure people understand its importance and motivate them to actually feel accountable for it? So we're going to dive into this one, our final one. And so if we can go to the poll, and Kevan, you're first on this one, so hopefully you can at least get on the board with one. But this is a multiple choice, so maybe it's easier or harder, I don't know. But how are you reporting the company's cyber risk today? So to our participants here, risk scorecards. So your kind of business level application views of risk boiled down for business audience, vulnerability lists, right? Your prioritized list of vulns and trends, new, open, closed, key risk indicators. So cyber risk is part of our enterprise key risk indicator reports, and you're putting those in there. Or no formal risk reporting. We don't produce reports we only produce reports really for the security team and act on an ad hoc basis. So it's multiple choice. So we'll give people a minute here, but Kevan, why don't you formulate your response?
I certainly like to think that most organizations are somewhere down the maturity path here where a scorecard is presented. Otherwise, again, how do you expect leaders who have control of resources to allocate those resources to address risk? If you can't boil it down to a simple 1 or 2 page view, you're in a hard place. So the first one I think has to be checked, and the third one as well. Boards are more interested in cyber risk than ever, and I don't believe cyber insurance is going to be around as a band-aid for much longer. So I'm going with 1 and 3.
Okay. All right, Erik.
I'm gonna go the opposite of Kevan on this one, and say that although I agree with what you said, Kevan, that boards care more about cyber than ever, and they even understand cyber better than they ever have, and these are the types of things that we should report to senior leadership. Well, I think that most reporting is probably still ad hoc. We gather it when it's asked for urgently, and with much panic. And this in most reporting is going out to security and more tactical teams.
Okay, let's see the results. Oh, okay. Interesting. Finally, Kevin, you got one.
I won one.
All right. Well, this is great because I think this is a really, when we were prepping for this, this was one I think where we have some real difference of opinions here, which is interesting. And so, the meme kind of pokes fun at it, but this notion of, hey, there's some drama going on and no one cares. So, and Kevin, starting with you here, I think you've certainly worked a lot across the business and you've had executive support, but you've really been able to turn your risk reporting into something that motivates, get people on board. So I'd love you to dig into how you made that happen and, and what it took.
Oh, well, thanks for the compliment. I got to give credit where credit's due. I've only been in the role for a year, so a lot of this predates me. But yeah, everything's rolled up as a scorecard. And when I say everything, I mean vulnerability information, but I also mean missing controls. We've got operational, privacy, cloud controls, security controls. We've got this really kind of evolved and segmented report that lets you see where are you doing well and where are you not doing well. In addition to an overall score, you can say, okay, I'm doing okay with operations because I've got my monitoring in place. I've got my root cause analysis done on time. I'm following change control, but my cyber is not so great. Like I've got too many vulnerabilities. Maybe Wiz is telling me I've got too many vulnerable cloud configurations. So we really give a condensed but rich view of what's going on with your product. We also benchmark you against your peers within your product group, right? So that's going to leverage the power of a little bit of competition. That's where teams and first line managers are like, oh, I got to do better than those other guys, right? And gals. So I think you have to, I'm losing my train of thought here, Eric. I'm going to pass it to you while I regain it.
Yeah, I agree that gamifying it can be successful when folks are, I guess, when it's equitable. Because if folks don't understand the scoring mechanism, if you're comparing, a sysadmin team to a development team, and I think you said that you keep them within the same groups, right? It's not comparing apples to apples. And I talked a little bit about it earlier too, but really using these exercises as ways to learn about processes that work well and processes that don't. So you can say, hey, this team over here, they have a similar architecture or similar application library that this team over here has. How come they're able to remediate this faster than this other team over here that is similarly structured? And interview those teams, learn from them, see what they're doing well. And sometimes it might just be a gap in understanding responsibilities. Sometimes it might be someone that needs just to understand, where and when they should be working on this sort of thing. And sometimes it's just there's tools that those teams are using, the ones that are doing it well. Maybe they figure out a way to script something. Maybe they figure out a way to automate some of these things that they can apply to those other units that aren't doing as well.
Got it. And you said something in our prep that was interesting. This notion, Eric, of, well, it's great to have all this reporting and accountability, right? And both, I think accountability came up multiple times where you're talking about who's ultimately accountable, because as Kevin said, security finds these and helps organize, prioritize, and get people on board with what to fix, but ultimately other teams are responsible for fixing. But if there's a breach, whose neck is on the line is usually security. But, is that a sign of maturity? Is that something that's changing the more shared this becomes? We'd love to dig into that with both of you. This notion of how shared is it, and how much of this is really a process and communication change. We tend to look at security very much technology, but this is a big kind of communication and process change.
It's a cultural push. Go ahead, Erik.
I was just going to say, when you think about like the RACI chart and, who's accountable, I think, you don't hear about, devs getting canned because there was a breach. You hear about CISOs getting canned because there was a breach. So I think right now it's still security teams that even if the RACI chart doesn't say CISO, or the reality is they are the ones that are accountable for to ensure that systems are updated, that you have strong remediation programs, and that you're at least doing the due diligence of what you need to do to even get to that point where decision needs to be made about who's getting canned or not.
And Kevan, how do you feel? How do you get that? I mean, so it's, in some ways we know the CISO role's hard, and it's kind of, you've got all this responsibility with not a lot of ownership, right? So it seems influence is even more important. So how do you look at that?
Sure. I mean, influence ultimately is about attention and relationships. So I know one of the things that we do at Morningstar that I think is very successful is we take the grassroots interest with our security champions who are highly empowered. We basically make them be part of the process throughout. Like, they have a lot of direct hands-on. They get extra attention. They get extra training and education. They put them in the spotlight. So we get this grassroots interest across the organization. And we have to have the support of the higher ups. It has to be C-level interests, at least periodically, like every year, let's set some OKRs, or every year, let's take a look at how we're doing year over year. There has to be that top-down matching with the bottom up. And, we meet very regularly to look at these scorecards. These are not just sent to somebody. We're not just relying on email and other notification channels. We're relying on gathering, spending the time, paying attention, and all of those things you can do to influence positive and negative reinforcement.
And you have buy-in from your senior leadership team, Kevan, and
Right.
that's the most crucial thing, perhaps, out of this whole gamification question is, who is approving this and who is actually going to hold people's feet to the fire for if things aren't done. Because if you don't have the support of your senior leadership team, which is, I think, still a challenge for a lot of organizations, gamifying it or having improving remediation success is increasingly difficult.
And why do you find that? Why do you hear that so hard to do, Erik? Getting other, the leadership on board.
Yeah, because I mean, leadership's concerned about running the business. They want to do things that are generating revenue or improving experiences for customers, or their partners, or for whatever reason the business exists. So security, I don't think it's viewed anymore. I think 5 years ago it was viewed as a distraction of that, hey, why do I have to do what cybersecurity teams say when I should be worrying about revenue generating type functions. But I think there is a more of a recognition. Hence, my comment earlier about boards are understanding cyber better than ever. There's more of a recognition that cybersecurity can lead to benefits to customers and increase trust for your organization. So an assurance that you're protecting their data, and that if there is a breach, you're going to be honest about it, and not kind of not be some of the bad examples that we've seen over the past year or so, about, skirting around the actual issue. You know, you want customers to be able to trust you, and tying security back into your brand trust is fundamental for that.
I will just add that it's important as a security practitioner to be empathetic and a good listener. There's something in your org's mission and values, like Erik was alluding to, that is a hook that leads you deeper into a better engagement, positive engagement with security. Maybe you're a data company and you need your data to always be accurate and available. Well, then you've got hooks into integrity and availability. Maybe you're a multinational company and all of the privacy regulations are driving your legal team and your senior people crazy. Well, then you better enable privacy technologies, right, as part of your security and governance. Just listen for it. Don't come in with preconceived notions, and don't get too triggered by all of the crazy bad things that you see, because you'll see those things. Just be better than that. Be more empathetic and be a good listener.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, Erik, you won. So congratulations. We don't get quite the fanfare of Family Feud, but it must feel good. You can have a good afternoon. And, Kevan, sorry you didn't win. We have a few questions from the audience, so I think we can dive into those. Here's one about considering the costs involved and the platforms being used. At what size, should a company start hiring Red Room pen testers? So what would you guys say to that?
So I guess I believe that there should be an order to these things, that you want to have strong vulnerability management in place before you start diving into detailed penetration tests. Maybe some numbers to shoot for would be in the 80% range, that you have kind of automated patching. You feel like you have that your systems are about 80% of these systems are continually up to date. After that, doing penetration testing as a means to find new vulnerabilities that your tools might not be finding, but also the impact and how far, what the implications might actually be towards an exploit being done. And I would do a pen test until you get down to more like kind of low and medium type findings before you start looking at red team engagements, which would be more holistic ways of trying to see how far an attacker could get, and looking at other means beyond just what the types of tools that penetration testers do, where they would actually emulate an attacker, think like an attacker and see how far they get. But I think there is a maturity that path that organizations should follow before they go through and start looking at red teams.
I like to leapfrog progress and those sorts of stages if I can. So I would say once you have 50 people on your security team, you should have at least one red teamer, someone who's allowed to roam and is allowed to pick their own targets, and of course is working with management to make sure that high value targets, that there's no blind spots there. Like maybe you're lacking a mobile security testing tool, maybe you're lacking a really robust runtime monitoring for APIs. Okay, that's a gap. A red teamer can help you demonstrate why that gap needs to be filled, right? So I would use them really kind of as a blunt object, right, to help me justify certain improvements and enhancements to my program. But I hear what you're saying. I do understand that, Erik. You're going to be throwing money away if you're like, let's hire 5 red teamers, and you're not even addressing the obvious stuff, right? That's exposed to the world.
Yeah, and I think that's a valid point, Kevan. I like what you said. I think just making sure that that red teamer is focused on stuff that's not being vulnerability scanned, or stuff that wouldn't lead to other findings that you already that
Right.
are corrective measures that you have, that tools in your environment can already tell you.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, then there was a question also, about GPT-4, BigQuery, kind of, just with the amount of kind of automation and machine learning coming in, making it, quote unquote, easier to manage assets. Like, how do you look at, I would take a little bigger, like you look at GPT and stuff like this. How do you look at that coming into vulnerability risk management? Have you seen anything in there? I'd love to get your guys' thoughts.
I'll go first. Don't use the public versions. You can't feed proprietary data into those. There's a re-identification attack risk that's very real. You really don't want it giving answers that are like, this is what's going on at Morningstar, right? You don't want that. So you have to figure out a private way to consume these, right? And I agree, there's huge potential there. I think it's really exciting. You're going to have it supervised by trained security people. This is not a silver or magic bullet, but it will definitely get us to a point where it's easier to manage and can maybe answer things around likelihood of exploitation and prioritization and what's the best path to fix. I mean, it's kind of an open-ended technology, and that's exciting.
And I wonder if GPT and generative AI tools will lead to some of the same problems we've had with security and asset management in general, as businesses rush to add these types of technologies in their environment. So I like to think about, are we inventorying the type of data where we're allowing these models to learn from? Do we know which SaaS companies are using these models to with our data to help provide solutions for us or for other types of reasons? So I go back to where we kind of started this webinar, like inventorying and assessing risk of it, and ensuring there's some sort of life cycle around it, because generative AI is very exciting right now. I think you're going to have lots of folks in your business wanting to onboard these technologies, but thinking about it with the same lens that we have with asset management and vulnerability management, so that these things don't suddenly creep up on you 1, 2, 3 years down the road, and getting ahead of it now with our lessons learned that we learned from asset inventories and other such things. I think is important for security leaders to think about.
Got it.
I feel like we didn't answer the question. It's a very interesting question. Are people really more informed on their data or less? I need a little more to go on, but what I'm imagining is that if you ask ChatGPT, should I fix this CSRF or should I fix this SQL injection? And having a conversation, right, with the AI about, like, well, tell me more about the context. I feel, again, like it could help you if you knew at least a little bit about modern vulnerability management. If you were a newbie, it would just lead you to the wrong thing. I've had these conversations. I've had a little bit of fun, a little playtime, and sometimes it's just really, really wrong, the things that it recommends. I don't know if anyone else has run into that, but it's plausible, but absolutely wrong.
Yeah,
so
and
we're not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, if you're using the open model as well, it doesn't know anything about your business. We talked about business importance, context, asset importance, and all that. It might lead you towards this is what a CSRF or a cross-site scripting is, and here are the risks involved, but it's not going to be able to tell you where, why it would have an impact to your business. Yeah,
Right. But on the other side, okay, if you could give it your threat model, you could give it your context, you could give it your known vulnerabilities across all sources, maybe even your missing security controls, I bet you would get some interesting output that you could sift through. You know what I mean? Like it would be a way to mass produce an analysis that would at least be worth reading.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's a good way to, I think, end the conversation. So I wanted to, thank you both. I'd like to also open it up for each of you to give a closing remark. And maybe Erik, we start with you. If you want to any closing thoughts or advice, floor is yours.
Yeah, I'd recommend organizations take a holistic approach to vulnerability management, understanding assets, understanding all the tools that they have in their environment, because you probably have a lot of stuff that's doing some sort of discovery and some sort of vulnerability assessment, and finding a way to add a means to unify a consistent prioritization strategy by leveraging what's important for your business, threat likelihood, and whether controls are strong and or effective, supporting those vulnerabilities as well. Yeah, I think that'd be my closing remark. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Kevan, over to you.
Wow, where to begin? So we have been Brinka users for some time now, and I think the pattern or the insight that's emerging for me is that you should treat your modern vulnerability management platform like its own internal product, right? You're going to have releases. You're going to have certain expected features. You're going to have to make release, you're going to have to manage change over time. This is not just set it up once and then it's a simple process to plug in some new thing. We're constantly evolving this thing. But to Erik's point earlier, we can't just change the rules of the game overnight, because some people have performance of their scorecard tied to an OKR. They're supposed to improve their scorecard over the course of the year. I can't just change the way the scorecard algorithm works or just add new sources willy-nilly, right? That's going to affect their performance evaluations, right? So having this well understood roles and responsibilities, and then managing change and thinking about it like you're managing an important enterprise product, it just happens to be used by internal people, is the way to go. Again, in an enterprise setting, you have a lot of stakeholders. You want their buy-in. You want them to be motivated. Let's be careful about how we manage that, and pick a good vendor. If you're going to rely on a vendor, you got to make sure they're going to partner for you.
Okay. Well, thank you guys very much. Thank you both. Erik, congrats on winning. We had that QR code up there. If you want to find more information about Brinka, you can scan there. It'll take you some great resources, and we will sign off with that. So thank you both very much. Thank you for everyone who joined us and participants, and look forward to more of these. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Congrats.
Thanks, Kevan. See ya.